Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. This time, we're going to be diving into something pretty ambitious, a proposed system called Bilton Tun,
Yeah,
which is pronounced Sampurna Samadhan,
right. Thanks for that.
meaning complete solution, and well, that's the goal.
A complete solution to human suffering, no less.
Old.
Yeah, and we're not just talking hypotheticals here. This deep dive is based on an ebook excerpt.
In Hindi?
That's right, written in Hindi, that lays out a very specific plan for how this system could actually work.
It gets into the nitty-gritty.
It really does, and the minds behind it are
Premjit Sirohi.
Premjit Sirohi, yeah, the founder of,
Universal Life Management, or ULM for short.
and his co-founder, Mukunpai Patel. Sirohi is described as this kind of philosopher, visionary guy.
And Patel brings years of experience in social work to the table.
So they're clearly deeply concerned about the state of the world and think they might have a way to fix it.
Absolutely, and they start with a really basic premise.
Which is?
Human life is inevitably a mix of happiness or suk.
And suffering. Dukkha.
Right, you got it.
It's like yin and yang.
Exactly. And they argue that all the systems we've built, with their focus on money, competition, individual achievement, they're actually making this problem worse.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it?
It is.
Because we kind of assume that, like, oh, we're progressing, things are getting better.
But are they really?
Yeah, are we actually happier? I mean, think about your own life for a minute.
Yeah.
Do you have enough money to just buy whatever you want, do whatever you want?
Not even close.
Right, most people don't. And this ebook argues that this gap,
Between what we want and what we can actually afford.
that this gap is actually holding back the entire economy.
You know, when I first read that, I was like, wait a minute, isn't that how it's supposed to work?
Right.
But their argument is that because so many people lack purchasing power, there's this limit on demand, which then limits production and job creation, and the whole system gets stuck.
It's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, exactly. A cycle of scarcity.
I kind of imagine it like a restaurant with like an amazing chef.
Michelin-star chef.
Yeah. But like only a handful of tables.
Oh, I see.
So they could be serving way more happy customers, but their potential is limited.
By the number of people who can actually afford to eat there.
Exactly. And in this case, it's the capacity of people to actually afford what the economy is producing.
That's a great analogy.
So what's the solution then, according to these guys?
Well, they call it Sampurna Samadhan, and it proposes something pretty radical.
Get me with it.
A world without money
What?
and without markets.
No money at all. I mean, I think a lot of our listeners are just like, huh.
Yeah, it's a huge shift, no doubt.
I mean, we're so used to the idea of earning money to buy the things we need.
It's like the fundamental basis of our society.
It is.
But the ebook acknowledges this. It acknowledges that it's a huge shift. They envision this system where instead of money, there's this centralized way of, tracking everybody's needs and desires.
So like Big Brother is watching you kind of thing.
Well, they don't frame it that way, but
Yeah.
there is that element of like a central authority.
Okay.
But the idea is that everyone would have access to the goods and services they need to live,
A good life.
a fulfilling life.
A fulfilling life. Okay. But how do you even begin to figure out what people need? I mean, everybody's different.
Right, and they get into that.
So instead of getting a paycheck every month, I'd be like, placing requests.
Yeah, it'd be more like, I need food, housing, healthcare, and then the system just provides it.
Whoa.
Of course, everyone would contribute by working.
Right, because somebody's got to grow the food and build the houses.
Exactly, so work would be mandatory for adults.
Like everybody.
Well, between the ages of 25 and 50.
Okay.
But the key is that you get to choose a job that actually aligns with your interests and skills, not just doing whatever pays the bills.
So it's not like everybody's going to be stuck doing jobs they hate.
That's the idea.
Okay, but then that raises the question of how do you define a fulfilling life in this system?
That's a big one.
Because without money as like, a measure of success,
Yeah.
what does happiness even mean?
That's a crucial point, and that's where we'll pick things up next time.
All right, cliffhanger.
Got to keep people coming back for more.
That's right. We'll see you soon for part 2 of this deep dive into Sampurna Samadhan. So last time, we left off with this pretty mind-blowing concept.
A world without money.
Without markets, without, like, the whole system of supply and demand that we're all used to.
Yeah, it's hard to even wrap your head around it.
It really is, like, how do you make economic decisions in a system like that?
Right. How do you even decide what to produce, how much, who gets what?
I mean, these are, like, the most fundamental questions, right?
And these are exactly the questions the ebook tries to answer.
Okay, so what do they say?
Well, their solution is It's pretty ambitious.
Let's hear it.
They propose using, like, sophisticated mathematical models and algorithms.
Algorithms, like the ones that, like, recommend videos to me online.
Similar idea, yeah.
Yeah. Those things are going to be running an entire economy.
That's what they're proposing. Basically, they envision these algorithms planning production, allocating resources, distributing goods and services.
All based on data about people's needs and desires.
Exactly. So it's like
a centrally planned economy.
Right, but driven by data instead of, like 5-year plans and bureaucrats.
I guess that makes sense, but wouldn't that be insanely complex?
It would be hugely complex.
I mean, think about all the different things people want and need.
It's constantly changing, too.
Right, like how could an algorithm possibly keep up with all of that?
Well, they argue that with, today's computing power and advancements in data analysis, it's becoming more and more feasible.
Okay, but how?
Remember those citizen profiles we talked about earlier?
The ones with the 4 categories of desires and the personality types?
Right, so imagine a system that's constantly gathering data on all of that.
Not just for me, but for everyone.
For the entire population, exactly.
So let's say, I don't know, I'm really craving a mango lassi. Okay. I log onto this system, I put in my request, and that data gets fed into this massive algorithm.
Which is figuring out how many mangoes need to be harvested.
How much yogurt needs to be made.
And how to get that mango lassi to your doorstep.
While doing the same thing for millions of other people.
Exactly. It's a demand-driven economy.
Demand-driven, okay.
Where production is tailored to meet people's expressed needs and wants.
So it's like, I don't know, those online grocery delivery services, but for literally everything.
Kind of, yeah.
I could order a new pair of shoes, a haircut, a doctor's appointment.
All through the same system.
Wow. It's like the ultimate convenience.
That's one way to look at it.
But then, doesn't that make people totally passive?
That's a good point. And the ebook actually addresses that.
They do.
They envision a system where people can, propose new goods and services, give feedback on existing ones.
So it's not just like some all-knowing algorithm telling us what we get.
Right. It's more like a collaborative process.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And, this kind of leads into the other key part of Sampoorna Samahan.
The political structure.
Exactly. And it's just as radical as the economic model.
All right. Lay it on me.
They're talking about direct democracy.
Direct democracy, so...
No more electing representatives.
Whoa! Citizens would be making all the decisions.
That's the idea.
But how would that even work? Like, would we all have to vote on every single issue?
Well, they envision these open communication platforms where people can propose and approve laws.
Hold leaders accountable.
Resolve disputes.
So it's like a massive online forum for running the entire country.
Essentially, yeah.
And everything would be transparent. Like, I could see exactly how decisions are being made, who's proposing what.
That's a key part of it, this radical transparency.
No more backroom deals, no more secret agendas.
They believe that kind of transparency would really help reduce corruption.
I mean, it sounds good in theory, but what about political parties? Would those still exist?
Nope. They actually propose getting rid of political parties altogether.
Wow. No more campaigning. No more partisan gridlock.
It's a pretty bold vision.
It is, but it's also kind of hard to imagine what that would look like in practice.
Well, the goal is to move away from that, us versus them mentality that often comes with party politics.
To focus more on collaboration.
Exactly, where citizens work together to solve problems.
It all sounds very idealistic, but I have to wonder, how realistic is this?
Yeah, that's a fair question.
I mean, we've seen so many attempts at creating utopian societies throughout history.
And most of them haven't exactly ended well.
Right, so are we really assuming that people are just gonna, naturally cooperate and share resources?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's one we have to consider really seriously.
Absolutely.
Because while this ebook paints a really compelling picture of a world without poverty or want,
we have to be honest about the potential downsides, too.
Even with the best intentions and the most amazing algorithms, there are going to be unforeseen consequences.
And let's not forget about the human factor.
Right, people can be unpredictable.
So how would this system deal with things like motivation, innovation, the potential for abuse of power? These are all important questions, and that's what we'll be exploring next.
So we're talking about some pretty big challenges here.
Huge challenges, yeah.
I mean, we've seen these kinds of utopian ideas before.
Throughout history, yeah.
Think about those early kibbutzim in Israel.
Communal living, shared resources.
Right, or all those attempts at establishing socialist economies in the 20th century.
And of course, we can't forget the Soviet Union.
The elephant in the room.
Exactly.
The ambitious attempt at a centrally planned economy.
And it ultimately failed.
That's what I was thinking. Didn't the Soviet system just kind of collapse under its own weight?
It did, yeah.
So how does Sampoorna Samahan address that?
Well, the ebook actually analyzes those past failures in some detail.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, they argue that a lot of those systems failed because of,
Lack of technology.
right, insufficient technology, bad data collection.
Not enough democratic participation.
Exactly.
So they're saying that basically they were trying to do something incredibly complex with inadequate tools.
That's their argument.
And now with all the advancements we have in computing and big data,
Global communication?
we could actually overcome those limitations.
That's what they believe, yeah.
Okay. But technology aside, there's still the human element.
The human factor. Always.
I mean, can we really change human nature that much?
That's the big question, isn't it?
We're wired for competition, for self-preservation, for looking out for number
For survival of the fittest, right?
Right. So how do you account for that in the system?
Well, the ebook takes the view that a lot of what we consider human nature is actually a product of our environment,
Meaning?
specifically our current economic and social systems.
Oh, I see. So they're saying if we change the system
If we create a world where everyone's basic needs are met,
where there's no fear of scarcity,
then human behavior will change too.
we'll become more cooperative, more altruistic.
That's their thinking, yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty bold claim.
It is a bold claim.
It's hard to wrap my head around it, to be honest.
I understand.
Like, on the one hand, I can see how our current system,
Creates a lot of negative behavior.
yeah, greed, selfishness, exploitation.
But to think that we could just fundamentally rewire ourselves.
It's a leap of faith, isn't it?
It is a leap. And the ebook acknowledges that.
They do.
Yeah, they talk about the need for education, ethical values, systems of accountability.
Checks and balances.
Exactly, to make sure this kind of system doesn't turn into some dystopian nightmare.
Right, because that's always the fear, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
That even with the best intentions, things can go horribly wrong.
Human nature is a powerful force.
It really is. So it seems like they're not just talking about changing our economic and political systems.
It's deeper than that.
It's like a shift in human consciousness.
That's a great way to put it.
Sampurna Samadhan is almost like a philosophy.
As much as a blueprint for a new society.
It's challenging us to rethink everything we thought we knew about how the world works.
About what's possible, yeah.
So where does all this leave us? We've explored this really radical proposal. We've talked about the benefits, the potential problems.
We've wrestled with some pretty big questions about human nature.
Big questions, yeah. What are the key takeaways here?
I think, first and foremost, Sampurna Samadhan forces us to expand our thinking.
To question our assumptions.
Yeah, are there other ways to organize ourselves?
To make sure everyone has a chance to live a good life.
To be happy.
Right. It's a reminder that the systems we live in, they're not set in stone.
They're human creations.
And we can change them.
Exactly.
And even if you don't agree with everything in this proposal,
Which is totally understandable.
it raises some really important questions.
Questions we should all be thinking about.
What's the purpose of our economic system? What does true happiness look like?
Can we create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive?
Without poverty, without this constant pressure to compete.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge to our imagination.
And to our values.
To everything we thought we knew.
So we want to leave you with a final thought, a question for you to consider.
What is it?
If Sampurna Samadhan were to actually happen, what would be your biggest personal challenge?